What is up, peeps? It is nuts. I don't do any YouTube videos, so you won't know me. Today I'm going to be doing a Kindred ADC guide. I am a Kindred ADC and have been for the past like 3 years. So I've been maining it for quite a while. I'm playing in High Diamond, but obviously I don't really care about solo queue that much. So if you want to look at people who are actually succeeding in solo queue more than me, you can look at Guerrero on UNE. This guy in Korea, I don't know how to pronounce the name. Kindred in Japan. We also have a Grandmaster Kindred ADC in NA, but I didn't find him, so I don't know where he gone. But yeah, I'm gonna be going over strategy. So runes, items, how to build. How to adapt to games, how to kind of lane, how to do team fights, a couple of ability tricks. I'm gonna try and keep it as short as possible. And yeah, let's get straight into it. So before we jump into runes, let's understand how and why you pick Kindred. So Kindred is normally a jungler, right? But I've played him as an ADC, and I think that's the role that he shines the best in and snowballs the best. So Kindred has both burst and DPS, and he can kind of extend on both of these depending on the game. His main strength, obviously, is going to be his R, which is a huge tool, not only for utility, for dueling, for getting bounties, and especially the strength of it is in late game, absolutely scaling, snowball, beast. So early game you're going to be a little bit on the weak side, and then Kindred is going to be the best scaling ADC alongside Jinx. So why play Kindred right now? Why am I doing this guide right now? Well, I've been wanting to do it for a while, but Jinx and Zeri are dominating the meta, and Kindred is a great pick into it because you have a lot of burst, a lot of mobility, and you have your R, which can lifeline your team, so you can kind of force the enemy ADC to either come into that R range or die, basically at a distance. So we're gonna go over that a little bit later. Right now, let's jump straight into the runes. So what rune do you go as Kindred ADC? There's kind of a couple of ways you can play it. So I'm gonna start with precision real quick. So in precision, you can either go press the attack or conquer. Used to be lethal tempo, but then they nerfed it. And to be honest, conquer is always going to be more valuable to you than lethal tempo in both lane and late game because you're kind of 50% based on abilities and 50% based on attacks. So having that extra AD and extra healing will help you more than the attack speed and range. So then you're gonna go Triumph. If you really need it, Presence of Mind. I'm gonna go over real quick when you go Presence of Mind. So Alacrity or Bloodline, they're both good. Alacrity is more towards early game if you're going to be struggling with kind of clear. So if you're against like poke and stuff like that, you're gonna want that. Then Bloodline is better scaling and it guarantees you some good lifesteal, so you don't have to build it in your items later on. So it's quite useful. For the bottom tree, these three are good. I usually prefer Last Stand. It's much more damage than Coup de Grace. And you already have an execute on your E, so usually Last Stand gives a lot more value out of your R and in like duels and stuff. I also really love to go cut down and you build coal and really absolutely annihilate tanks. That is also one of the strengths of Kindred, is how easy it can melt tanks. So what do you go secondary when you go precision? So if you have Triumph, which is what I recommend, you will need biscuits because you'll need a source of sustain, mana sustain in the early game. And then you can go either magical footwear or perfect timing. Approach velocity is also kind of useful when you are against champs that have a lot of mobility and can kind of try and kite you. It's kind of helpful, and usually I will build Stormrazor with it to kind of emphasize that slow effect. So then we're going to have attack speed, adaptive. When you can, go health, because that scales, and health helps with your triumph, but also helps with your R, because your R is percent of health. So always helpful if you can go health. If you can't, obviously armor and defensive, that's kind of adapting to the game. So what if you don't go precision? The other kind of runes you can go are either electrocute or first strike. So it's kind of a similar playstyle, electrocute and first strike. It depends how you want to play it. So electrocute, you wouldn't go Hail of Blades because actually electrocute just does more damage, and Hail of Blades is not really going to help get that burst. You're going to get more value out of electrocute, and that's only something I've discovered quite recently. So these three, they're all kind of good. Taste of Blood is if you need sustain kind of in early against stuff like poke, or it kind of depends. And then if you don't need it, definitely go sudden impact. It's really strong because it gives you lethality and magic penetration. Your W is magic damage, so this gives you a lot of value out of it. I usually go eyeball. It kind of helps with the snowball. If you're kind of used to going Ghost Poro, it's not really something you do in the ADC role usually, because you have your blue ward at level 9, but some people like it. And then yeah, here obviously this is going to disappear in a couple of patches. We're going to have more money, so this is definitely what we're going to want to take. The money wise, I forgot the name, but that will help snowball immensely. And then the two other options right now are ultimate or relentless, which are kind of both really strong, and depends whether you want to have your R up more or to kind of get catches more. So it depends whether you're oriented to work catch or team fight. And then when you go this, same thing as precision, you're going to want this. So now if we go for first strike, it's relatively similar. So you would want either magical footwear or perfect timing. Biscuits is really useful. And approach velocity is my favorite. You can also go cosmic insight if you really kind of don't have any value out of approach velocity, but generally I would advise going approach velocity. And as a secondary, if you go this, you would want triumph and Ira electricity or bloodline to give you that kind of edge. You can also go cut down triumph if you're going for the cold start. So that's pretty much it for the runes. We want to move to items right now. So starting items, always going to go either Coal or Dorn's Blade. So obviously, if you've played ADC in the season 12, you'd be like, what the fuck, why are you recommending Coal? Because Dorn's Blade is just a better start for most of the time. So the reason I recommend Coal is only for the cut down build. So we talked about cut down being 5 to 15% more damage to champions, and Dorn's Blade gives 80 health. And if you don't have that, you actually get more damage from Coal than you go from Dorn's Blade. And you already have sustain in your kit. We'll go over the abilities a little bit later, but so Coal is actually a pretty decent start if you can allow it. So against tanks, stuff like Nautilus, Leona, I will just start Coal, because I know that if they go in and I manage to, pull myself out with my Q and stuff, I will always kill them afterwards. So it's really a great snowballing item. I wouldn't recommend, Dorns and then Coal, because you're delaying your power spikes. So yeah, it's either Dorn's Blade or Coal, depending on what you want. Boots, no other option. You're always going to go Berserk. It's just a better option, and you kind of need it for your kit to work. I'm not even going to, debate it. If you guys want to say in the comments, I will look at it for sure. So then free first items is going to be here. So what you always want is this structure of third item power spike, i.e. Mythic, and then you have another kind of crit item. So you have the 60% spike from Infinity Edge to spike at the time where you have those free items. So people will kind of recommend you on like Mobify stuff like that. They will tell you Infinity Edge or Essence Reaver. I really don't recommend those items. They're kind of bait. When you kind of start playing it, you realize that crit is just better. It benefits your E. It benefits like how much you scale into the like. It's just better because like Sheen items, they don't really give you that much value outside of laning phase. So we're gonna go over which one to build when. So Kraken is kind of your default mode. So if you kind of want to melt tanks, this is great. But even if there's no tanks and you don't need Gale Force, so that would be when the enemies don't really have any hard CC skill shots, or just that some games I will just go Kraken because we need more DPS in the team. So yeah, Gale Force is good when you, for example, have poke that you want to reach. So stuff like Caitlyn, Ezreal, Xerath. It is great because it really helps you kind of get around, you know, their one skill shot ability and reach them a lot faster. So it's also a gap closer. Gale Force is also really great because out of your ult you can really kind of have a lot of value out of the active of giving a lot of execute damage. So last option, but I recommend it, but only in very specific cases. Immortal Shadowbow is a really good lifeline. They kind of nerfed it a couple patches ago, so it's not as strong as it used to be, but it's still got a couple of use cases. I do recommend though that if you go Immortal Shieldbow, to really be sure that you have damage on the team, because you're not going to have the same output DPS and burst as the two other options. Okay, so then the second item, that's entirely your choice, adaptive of the game. These are the four options that works the best for me. So I'm going to go over when to build what. So Stormrazor is when you are playing against a champ that's somewhat immobile and your E is usually not enough to kind of catch them. So even stuff like Jinx. So yeah, against any on-hit champion, I will go Stormrazor. So Kog'Maw, Jinx, yeah, every other on-hit player, laner, I will kind of go Stormrazor. It's really useful. And I think it's really undervalued, especially on Kindred. Then we're going to have Runans. Runans is when the game is kind of scaling on itself and you just need a little bit of clear. And it really helps because it's got much better stats than RFC. And it's just really cheap and it helps you get your spike as like it's the cheapest crit item, so it gets you your third item spike really fast. And because it has this kind of you clear waves faster, it's also kind of a snowball effect. But you will have a little bit less damage than with all the 3-hour items. So I would do this if your kind of mid-game is kind of assured, and once you get to your third item spike, you are always going to be like one of the strongest champs in the game. Collector is a really useful finisher. It has a really great synergy with your R. So your R is 10% maximum health, and this is 5% maximum health. If on top of that you have Grievous Wound, it is extremely powerful. And in my experience, is best paired with Gale Force, but Kraken Collector is also good. Immortal Collector sounds a bit troll, but it can also be good. Collector is a really strong kind of lethality against, kind of weak champions. And PD is my favorite item that I like to build when none of these really options. It's kind of my standard go-to. When none of these options really make sense in the game I'm in. So against tanks, I will either go Renans or PD. So for example, stuff like, Nautilus, Leona, like I was talking about earlier on, are great kind of champs to pick PD in. It's a really strong and cheap item. It's like Runan. So it's really great to give you a little bit more kiting, a little bit more even just the way it gives you a little bit more kind of moving closer to target. It's really, really useful. So always third item spike. I cannot stress this enough. If you build a Wits End before, you are trolling super hard. And by the way, in these first item and second item, if you want to sit on a Vamp Scepter or sit on a anti-heal, I forgot the name now. If you want to sit on an anti-heal component, you should do that because it is really useful and it can really help kind of even snowball. So yeah, 800 or 900 would be the limit, I'd say, and you only need one item slots because you will need the other for Infinity Edge. Okay, fourth and fifth item. Pick two, yeah, depends on the game. My personal favorite is Navori. It gives you so much kind of mobility in late game, and it's really, really great on Kindred. I cannot like recommend it enough. If you've never tried it, you should try it. Witsend, always a strong item. It's kind of got the same effect as PD to kind of help you kite and catch up onto people. And it's also, great into MR. Into AD, usually you either go, Guardian Angel is the only really AD. I wouldn't really go Death Stance. In some games maybe, but Guardian Angel is usually what I would go for when against an AD comp. Motor Reminder is really powerful because of your ults healing enemies too. So if you have it on, you will only heal them for 6% of their max health as opposed to 10. So it's really strong. Anti-heal is the best. It has the best value on Kindred than any other ADC. And then, Bloodthirster and LDR, those are kind of game specifics. If you don't have any sustain in your runes, then I would advise going Bloodthirster because it gives you a lot more kind of trading power in late game. And LDR is only when you're playing against super high tank that have more health than you. But usually you would have, Kraken, Cole, and you would just absolutely melt them in 3 shots. So LDR helps kind of do that. And you have the tank options. This is when you're kind of the solo carry and you really need to survive because otherwise your team can do nothing. So that is usually in the lower elos where you've got a lot of pressure because you are the solo carry pretty much. And Cleaver and Anathema are great at helping you survive because health is the best kind of stats that you can have in late game on Kindred if you want a little bit more survivability. So yeah, 650 health, and they're both quite cheap. So up to you. You'll kind of develop a sense of seeing what game kind of needs and what item. So I wouldn't be worried too much. Just try and play. Just start with this basic free item spike. You will see you will be very strong. I'll go real quick over the ability order, even if we're going to develop a little bit later what abilities do. Oops. But yeah, Q first, always. It is your strongest mobility tool. And then W or E. W is just the better max. E gives you a little bit more burst, but at the kind of expense of the extended trades damage. So mathematically, I think the Kindred kind of community has agreed that W is just a better one. And yeah, so W second and E third. Okay, what do your abilities do? So you have your passive, which is a very kind of strong complement to your kit. So the way Kindred works as an ADC is you're basically a champion, but with shitter base stats, right? And so you need this passive to completely overcome that weakness into becoming a strength. So you start becoming much more of a champion. Like you start becoming, equal to other ADCs, or if not like much stronger at 4 marks. So once you have your 4 marks, you have the range of I think it's Ash. I wouldn't remember, but yeah, you have a big range at 4 range. 4 marks is your like power spike in terms of marks, and you really are a little bit weaker before that. But how do you get your marks in ADC role? That's often a question I get when playing Kindred ADC. So Kindred can either get stacks from from enemy camps. That's what you get usually from the jungle, which is kind of less reliable in my opinion. And you can also have it by targeting an enemy champion and then killing it or having an assist. So the two ways I kind of get it. Obviously, when you're in game, you always kind of mark the enemy ADC or the enemy support, depending on which one is the most liable to, able to kill. And I'll oftentimes just get kills because I'm a very bully lane, kill-oriented player. So usually there is some action, and even if I'm behind, I always manage to get my marks. I'll explain a little bit later why. So one thing that's kind of important to note with your passive is that you can also get them from Rift Scuttler. So if at 3 minutes you're kind of pushing the wave, look out in the river and you have a 50-50 to be able to get the crab, and if you can get it, it's a free mark. It's really, really good and really worth it. Then you can have maybe a back timing. It's usually the time where the cannon wave arrives. So it's usually a good time to, shove the wave, get the crab back, and then you'll be back and your wave will be waiting for you at the turret. That's the best case scenario. But, and then once you start getting 1 to 3, you can go on Gromp and Raptor. And then in late game, it's very easy once you're above 4 to 7 and mid game kind of starts unveiling. You can kind of get into every single mark that you see that is somewhat available. As a rule, I'd say that dying for a mark is always worth it. 99% of the case, you're going to be scaling, and dying, if you're dying at the right time, it doesn't really matter. If you watch the battles, you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, marks are really important on you, especially the 4 first. I think I did the maths at one time, and each kind of mark is worth 350 gold, at least the 0 to 4, and then each mark after that is worth like 150 or 200. And yeah, you get range increase at 4 marks, at 7 marks, 11 marks, 14, so every 3 after that. So it's really useful to know these kind of spikes so you can kind of adapt the gameplay, but as you start playing Kindred, you'll understand exactly when these occur. So yeah, overall, you don't really need to know exactly what each of these do, just know roughly that you're getting stronger. So Q is a really important ability. I'll go into it more once we're in game because there are a couple of tricks and stuff to kind of know. Actually, I will go in game right now and kind of show you. I didn't go over sums actually. So yeah, you have cleanse or exhaust are the 2 sums I use mostly. Because cleanse is really important because Kindred is very sensitive to CC. So hard CC is really, really punishing on Kindred, and so you'll always need a little bit of help with that. So it's usually something I like to take, and exhaust is the strongest summoner on Kindred because you're always going to have value out of reducing a certain burst out of your R, out of, just because you have constant DPS, why did I pronounce it like that? It's really, really useful. So, going over abilities a little bit. So, one thing that's really important with your Q is going to be the targeting. So, I'm going to show actually with minions later on, but your Q is an auto reset, which means that if you're attacking, stop attacking him. If you're attacking him and you Q, so you will have that free auto attack. And actually, if you have Halo Blades, you can do 4 auto attacks because of that. But again, I wouldn't really recommend it. But yeah, it's really useful to have a lot of burst. And it's usually the trading pattern you do is always auto the target before you before you Q. So I'm going to show you why. So for example, well, there's 3 minions, so I would always target the 3 of them. But for example, if I want to, like, while I'm farming, if I want to click any of those minions, like if I don't, it will be a bit random where it's going to be, you know, like it selects somewhat the closest, but sometimes it doesn't. So if you want to, you know, for sure put the damage on someone, you just need to auto them first. And that's really important because, whatever. This is really important because if you don't do that, then you're gonna lose a lot of DPS on your Q. So always auto attack. If you've not seen my highlights video, I would recommend you do, because it can kind of show you the trading patterns. But yeah, the way you engage is always auto Q, auto, and into W. So yeah, the Q is also very useful to know stuff that you can jump. So obviously there's, you know, a lot of walls that you can kind of jump, and it's just a matter of habit of knowing, like, you know, which one you can jump, can't jump. Just, it's very useful because as an ADC you can jump over this wall, and that's really strong, because let's say like the enemy, you're stomping the enemy, and then you can go here and manage to kill before they reach turret, you know, like a jungler would. It's also very useful if the mark is on enemy grump, stuff like that. So yeah, use your jump. It's a dash that's really like useful and kind of low mana, so I would recommend using your Q as effectively as possible. Obviously the alcove is really useful to jump around too, but yeah, it's a huge advantage on kind of the enemies. So here you see the mark is in river, so what I was talking about earlier of just moving to get it, and usually junglers don't mind. And just a quick reminder, but you can get the mark from an assist, so that's something that is kind of useful to know. So then W is very important ability too. What's really important that I find most Kindred players don't really do is getting vision with it, because it grants vision in the center. If the center, so I'm going to show you real quick what I mean. That is not what I mean. So if the center is, you know, it will not give vision, for example, if you put it not here, but if you put it in like the center where you want to see, then you will get vision there. It's very useful when you want to like jump before, for example, you would get vision there if it was in the center. So very useful for that. So I was just editing and I was just wanting to add a little quick tip. So for your W, you know how it's energized, so at 100 stacks you get a heal, which is kind of, you know, quite sizable and really important for lane sustain. One thing that kind of you need to do as a player to make that happen more often is move between each auto. So don't ever stay still. I know it makes the tempo kind of a little bit harder because you kind of always need to walk around, but it's a good habit anyway. As an ADC, you should never be, you know, standing still. So yeah, now I'm gonna go with E. So E scales with crit, in case you didn't know. Very strong item. Did I say item? Very strong ability. It's important that you kind of measure when it's towards the end. So there's a threshold at which the E ability will crit, right? If you didn't know, it's about 35 to 40% of their health, kind of in mid game. So you need to kind of measure, but you get this from experience, right? But if you kind of have someone at this HP, this is the perfect time to E, because boom, your E will always crit. Whereas if you do it as a first thing, sure, you'll get the slow, but you will not get the full damage. So to maximize your DPS, usually the combo is QW, and then once he's kind of, well, it depends on your damage obviously, but once you measure that he's gonna be under the threshold, then you should kind of look to E. So R, it's got a lot of use cases. To cite a few, I mean, saving a teammate in a late game team fight. If you've seen my highlight videos, I've got a couple of examples of it. Saving a herald who's diving, so say you have a herald and it's on 1 HP. Usually it's kind of worth to get a hit or two. Obviously saving yourself. The two tempos that are really important is tower, so know when to get out of tower range, you know, based on your ults. So that's really important. So tower, and also manage to get your combos in. So I'm going to show you a little bit what I mean by that. So there's a timing just out of your R where you have to get the most burst, which is going to be with your E on second and your W, you know, active, and an auto attack on the guy, otherwise your Q won't charge. So once you get kind of used to it, it's a lot easier to master. But yeah, basically what you want is the champion to be in this state, and you will do a massive burst once you get out. So that's really useful. I think that's pretty much it for the abilities. There were a couple of other things, and if you have any question, I will be happy to answer them. So now we're gonna go real quick over matchups. Don't leave yet, it's really important. So ADC matchups, I'm gonna pull up this is more bigger. So yeah, as I said earlier, Jinx Zeri is really kind of your really strong champ against them. Obviously immobile champions you're gonna absolutely slay. So like Aphelios, Ashe, Varus, Kalista, Vayne, you can really bully him in lane. And you're also, you know, really strong into kind of Draven, Jhin, as long as you go electrocute or first strike. Usually electrocute because you can't really guarantee first strike against these guys. So yeah, as long as you kind of know what to build in which circumstance. So yeah, into on hit, like Jinx or Kog'Maw, always go electrocute. And into kind of more extended trades, so stuff like Sivir, I don't know, Senna, I guess. Twitch, you would go kind of PTA, or in, you know, certain cases you're gonna want Conqueror. But it kind of all depends on the team, not only just the enemy ADCs, obviously. Your hardest matchups are Kate and Hezreal. I wouldn't really, like, you know, recommend banning them, because they're not, like, you can still play, but you will, you know, get bullied and kind of rely on the team, at least in the early game. But you have ways of getting onto them. It's just, the lane is a little bit hard to get through. But if you have the right ADC, like support and jungler, you can win these lanes. It's just yeah, it's a bit rough, especially the Caitlyn. But yeah, I usually ban Senna, because even though she can kind of win, if she's playing on the support role, it makes any of those kind of ADCs much stronger. So because of her E only, like the fact that she can make them invisible and you can't target them, and it breaks your kind of E, and it's very obnoxious champion to play against. So I usually ban Senna. As Kindred it's very hard. But yeah, usually you're actually favored in a lot of matchups if you can kind of play your champion right. A couple of things I wanted to mention real quick is champions that you are good with, obviously, in the support role. Taric, Nami, and Renata are the three strongest picks by far. Like, it's absolutely insane combos and synergies for all three of them. Nami, insane burst. Renata, insane kind of survivability and like outplay potential and like 2v5 type of situations. Taric is kind of the same as Renata, but he offers a little bit more kind of sustain, and the combo with R, you've probably heard of it before. This is usually why Kindred ADC is referred to in like professional play and stuff like that. So yeah, these three are really strong. And then you also have, Pyke is really strong because of the R combo. Rel, Zillion, Brom. Yeah, all of these picks are really, really good. Generally, you don't, really have any bad supports apart from mage support. So like Xerath, Brand, Zyra, stuff like that will actually not really benefit you anything. So it's usually something I like to not have on my team, for example. And yeah, you have other synergies outside of bot lane. So if you're playing competitive, these are names you want to note down. Kled, because you allow him to get his passive back once you're in aura with him. Galio is really strong. It can even be a support. It's not really meta right now, so I didn't include it, but Galio is really strong, not only because of the R synergy, but because he helps you kind of lock down enemies, and it's really, really powerful combo. Then you have Darius, because he can get his passive stacked on as many champs as they are inside your R. So all of these are kind of usually mid-game, late-game synergies, but they are really strong nonetheless. So Azir, because he can soldier out of your R, and just he has a lot of poke, which kind of helps you reach people too. Fiddlesticks, same R synergy. Lilia, also she can get everybody, kind of affected, and usually she has anti-heal, so it's a very useful combo with Lilia. Mordekaiser is a completely insane combo, to Kindred, because anybody you Mordekaiser R's and Kindred ult will be the Kindred ult won't exist anymore, and they won't have the heal, so they will be on 10% HP and won't be able to do anything. So then you have Nocturne and Syndra, which are very powerful too together, to help kind of Kindred reach their target and stuff like that. So outside of the bot lane, Kindred gets fucked by Mordekaiser and Kha'Zix. Those are the two picks where I sometimes dodge, because they're even more obnoxious than Caitlyn and Ezreal would be in the bot lane. Mordekaiser basically disables your R, and it's really, really a pain, even if you build QSS, which I really don't like to build, because it's a really big waste of money for one thing. It's a pain. And then Kha'Zix, because of his invisibility, he's one of the biggest kind of counters. You also have Poppy, but you can play around Poppy. So I wouldn't recommend putting it there. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I think I went over everything right now. The gameplay, you'll kind of get used to it. Think of it a little bit like Kai'Sa in laning phase, and it's a mix between Kai'Sa and Raven, right, where you have burst and you are kind of a bully, but you also scale very well. So yeah, I hope I went over everything. If you have any questions, drop them in the comment. I recommend you watch my highlight video, not because ego, but it actually has a couple of trading patterns and how to kind of trade in late game and early game that you can kind of look at in 3 minutes. But yeah, I hope this helps. Thanks you guys for watching. Take care, and I'll see you outside.